From our studio in New Orleans, Louisiana, my name is Harmon Dash. Welcome to another edition of Make It Fair. We are very lucky to have with us Glenn Burns, a former state and federal prosecutor and a big proponent in Senate Bill 185 that it's making its rounds right now. Tell us about SB 185 and what it actually has in its content.
Senate Bill 185, which was proposed by Senator Bishop from New Orleans, is a bill that would allow the city of New Orleans to not be preempted by state law and make their own ordinances concerning the regulation of guns.
So as it stands now, there's no ordinance that New Orleans as a city could pass that wouldn't be preempted by the state?
That's correct.
Okay.
The state's law is preeminent, and therefore for us to make any kind of changes to that law for the city, we would have to get this bill passed, or a bill like it passed.
Well, what kind of things do we want to see? What kind of advances in gun control would we like to see in the city that may not be of concern to the rest of the state?
Well, at first you used the word gun control, and that's not something that we're trying to do. Okay. What we're trying to do is things that are common sense regulations that are not presently in the law, and that we in New Orleans, because we have by far the most serious problem in the state, need and want. For example, if your gun is stolen or lost, there is no provision in the law that you have to report it. Okay. And this way the city could make a provision that says if your gun is stolen, you need to report it to the police.
I mean, that seems pretty common sense. Why wouldn't someone report it to the police?
Well, it depends on how they got the gun, for one thing. And then the other issue, which is what I refer to the hot button things that happen, is that people say that any kind of regulation of guns is unconstitutional, that it's an attack on our Second Amendment. And statistics, which always can be manipulated, but statistics say that 91% of the people in this country agree with common sense regulation of guns. For example, it's already the law in Louisiana that you cannot take a firearm into an establishment where they sell alcohol. That makes sense, and that's something that's good.
Guns and alcohol don't mix.
Correct. It's also a law in Louisiana that you can't bring a gun within 1,000 feet of a parade. And that's obviously to protect Mardi Gras and other parades.
Lots of people gathering in a place seems common sense.
But if we had the control that we, I think, need, we would be able to expand that a little bit and say when a group wants to have a party at their neighborhood park, you wouldn't be able to have guns there either.
Okay, make reference to that Mother's Day massacre that happened here in New Orleans in the 7th Ward.
Correct. And you always, everyone worries about it being an attack on the Second Amendment, on the right of gun owners, and it's not.
I've always found that if you consider yourself a responsible gun owner, you probably want to join the conversation on how we as a city, a state, a country do better than we're doing on guns, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, it seems that there is an emotional response to any time that people say gun control, and that's why I made that comment to you.
Absolutely.
And we've got to get away from that emotional response and understand that it's just common sense. No one is going to come to your house and take away your gun. No one knows you have a gun. You know, it's interesting that in my experience, for 3 years, I had the pleasure of working with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms enforcing the federal gun laws. And I was shocked to find out that once a gun leaves the retailer, there is no documentation anywhere else where that gun goes unless it goes back to another retailer.
So there's no registry, there's no way to track where a gun goes. A person-to-person sale could just happen and nobody knows.
It's not only a person-to-person sale that could happen and nobody knows.
But for example.
But that's the best example. But also gun shows.
The loophole.
The loophole. Gun shows are a loophole wherein no one is required to make a registration statement. Now, don't get me wrong. When you buy a gun from Walmart, you have to fill out the form. You have a waiting period. But Walmart keeps that form. It's not submitted to anyone.
That's sort of the end of the line.
Correct.
It's interesting you mentioned there's been a lot of pushback against the idea of, say, a national gun registry where every gun is identified and we know who has it. A lot of people think, well, this is just going to make it easier for my gun to get taken away. But certainly every car in America is registered and the government knows who has it. You want to sell a car? Not that difficult, and the government knows about that sale as well, right?
Absolutely.
So,
and under the way the law is now, one of the things that I think would make sense, which is not any proposal that I know of right now, is that when you sell the gun, you maintain who you sold it to.
So there'll be some documentation.
So there is
at least
some documentation where
Okay.
they can run down the line.
Okay.
Okay?
Fair enough. Well, so Senate Bill 185 is proposing that New Orleans have the jurisdiction to be able to create its own policy regardless of what else happens in the state. So why would someone who doesn't live in New Orleans feel like this is an attack on their rights?
Well, one of the reasons is the same thing that I mentioned earlier, is that hot button issue. But when you think about it, I think our good friends in Monroe and Shreveport and Natchitoches and Lafayette would be pleased to know that when they come to New Orleans, they're going to be safe.
And right now, we're not taking any measures to try to fix these issues.
And right now, we are the leading city in the country for gun violence.
So we have a gun problem in New Orleans. We would like to advance some measures that could help get a handle on this without the state saying, no, you can't do that because everyone else in the rest of the state doesn't need it.
Correct, because that's the whole purpose of it, is that it's for New Orleans. And I truly believe that when we have local issues and local problems, it's the local people who need to make the changes that are required.
Okay, well, so where are we in this fight right now for Senate Bill 185?
My understanding, it's still in front of the Senate Judiciary B Committee. It comes up next week for a vote from the committee. And I believe that there is substantial support for it, and hopefully it will get voted out of committee favorably and go to the full Senate.
Well, so, you have an impressive list of credentials, but what can the average New Orleanian do if they want to get involved in this fight with you?
It's just as with any piece of legislation that people want to do something about. Call your legislator. Call your friends, your family, your relatives, those who live in other areas in the state, and ask them to help us try to deal with our problem.
The fight continues. Glenn Burns, former state and federal prosecutor here, a big proponent of Senate Bill 185 in Louisiana. We'd like to thank you for joining us, and good luck in your continued fight here. And of course, we always want to know what you think. Does New Orleans have a unique problem in the state of Louisiana in terms of gun violence? And should New Orleans have the ability to address these problems without the state intervening? We welcome your comments on our website, makeitfair.us, where you can always join us in the fight to make it fair. Also, share this video with your friends after you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For Glenn Burns, my name is Harmon Dash. Thank you for watching Make It Fair.